Well, guess what we have on the program today?
You've got mail.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
I wanted to, at the top of today's program, just take a few minutes and thank you for the various correspondence that I've been getting since the beginning of the program. It took a while, but in recent weeks in particular, I've been getting a lot of letters and emails from a lot of good friends of this program. And I wanted you to understand a couple of things. I just wanted to make this clear right at the beginning. I read your emails and I read your letters. And I appreciate the reports like this one that came in a while back, loud and clear on WRMI. They were hearing it in the afternoon. Others have been telling me about the time change going from 4 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern has been a help for some. We're coming into that time of the year on the shortwave side, by the way, where it gets a little awkward. Where it used to get dark early, the days are going to start getting longer. And I'm aware and I'm trying to think in advance of just how we're going to deal in the days and weeks ahead. Times a day and frequencies. I may be making a trip back to Florida in the not too distant future to work on a couple of projects. And one will be to figure out maybe some better times for this program, better airings. Had an email just the other day from a listener in Wyoming. Now, they listen as a podcast on iTunes, and they were saying that where they are, the signal is sometimes not great, and I understand it. And when I look at the pattern of the antennas we're currently using at WRMI, what's available, I can see why that would be a problem in Wyoming. But understand, I know, and it is a matter of prayer on my part that I want to get better coverage into other parts of the United States. If I can find the proper frequencies and antennas at WRMI, you bet I'm going to work on that. I've got other radio stations that have shown an interest in carrying this program, but I also know how much it would cost to be on those stations. And I'm not yet convinced it's a good investment. So I've really got to think about that. Maybe you have some ideas and suggestions, especially on shortwave. I'm getting audience mail and response from Canada and the United States. So you're out there, and I'm hearing quite a bit. It seems that if you look at the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Western New York in particular, even though there are those in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, here in Georgia as well, Alabama, Mississippi. I'm just off the top. These are just letters in recent days and weeks and emails that are coming to my mind. And I wanted to start for just a couple of minutes just to let you know that I do read each and every letter, and I take it to heart. I'm looking here on my desk. I've got this pile of paper. An individual sent me some great information, and I look at it, and over time, there's a good chance you'll be hearing me talk about some of the information you have sent me. With this program, as I've made it very clear before, I always do as much research as I possibly can. I want to make sure that everything that I tell you is not based on speculation or one person's opinion. If some of what I'm sharing is an opinion of other people, I'll let you know that there are those that think or those that believe. And I pray that if we all seek knowledge, and most important, as I was saying yesterday on the program, seeking wisdom. Wisdom is in short supply these days. It really is. We have so much knowledge at our fingertips. I'm looking at my little cell phone right now. It's sitting here turned down so it won't bother anybody. It's on my desk, on the charger as we speak. And my goal is to use that phone to get information. And I've got to be careful sometimes because there's a lot of stuff out there that if you're not careful, it looks very compelling, very believable. And I always have this constant prayer in the back of my mind whenever I'm reading something. Lord, give me the wisdom. Give me the wisdom to discern if what I'm reading is even true, or if I was to share this, am I sharing a non-truth, an untruth, a lie? I don't want to be a stumbling block to any of you. And believe me, if I make a mistake and I'm made aware about it, I'm going to let you know that I made a mistake, and I will correct the record. When I started this program, almost 6 months ago now, I can't believe that we've gone through September, October, November, December, January, and in just a couple of weeks, less than 2 weeks, we're going to be done with this month in less than 2 weeks of February. Where did the time go? And in these 6 months, I've learned a lot because this program has also forced me to go beyond my normal reading of news, my normal consumption of information. It's required me to talk to others, share privately with others, and actually dig a little deeper because guess what? I can't take the risk. I cannot take the risk of giving you bad information. Now, I know when we talk about things like, especially when I had Dr. Gales on Monday and Tuesday, we talk about the pandemic, how it's been used, and we also share our mutual concern about the miracle cure vaccines that almost sound like a snake oil pitch. And what troubles me, and I go back to my early days of working with a county in the response to this pandemic. Even then, the goalposts were being moved on a daily basis. I mean, I can understand that early on. But as we got a better handle and we kind of know what this thing is, the changing narrative has been one of the most disturbing aspects of dealing with this pandemic. You know it and I know it. Maybe it'll be over by summer, maybe by the fall, maybe by November, maybe by December. Here we are going into March. Now, I saw a headline yesterday, and if you've listened to this program for any length of time, we kind of predicted this was going to happen back a month or so ago. You remember about a month ago when all the infection numbers are just raging and exploding as we got toward Christmas? Remember that? Wasn't that long ago, was it? About 7 weeks ago. We're talking about, these numbers are going to explode and we need to stay home. We can't travel. We can't be with our grandparents or aunts or uncles or grandkids or any of that because the coronavirus is out to kill everybody. Don't travel. Stay home. Besides, the vaccine is almost here. And see, this is what bothers me about all of this. These vaccines are not vaccines in the traditional sense of the word. And there may be some merit to them, but I'm still concerned about the long-term effects of what they're trying to do. Now we're seeing the case numbers go down dramatically, the lowest since October when they were really going down. What's happened? What's changed? What miracles have half the government wrought to make all this suddenly start getting a wee bit better? A lot of people that don't pay attention to all of the information that's out there, this is where you don't use wisdom to discern. Oh, it must be the vaccine, and it must be all that wearing 3 masks. It must be working. You know what's really sad? Is how many people in the United States don't dig deep enough in their own mind to figure out the information readily available. They just hear we're living on headlines and sound bites. And I got news for you. Those that seek to control your life are counting on that. They're counting on you just living off a soundbite, that tiny little bit of information, and that becomes the sum total of your knowledge on any given topic, a soundbite or two. I know people that come out of the medical profession that have contacted me through email and other sources, and they take a profoundly different view on certain things than I do. And they are just totally sold on everything the government has done is essentially right from the very beginning. And I'm going, it's been a changing landscape since day one. Name me a 2-week period of time where the narrative didn't change and the goalposts get moved. How fast we forget. If somebody had come out in March of last year and told you in March of last year that we're going to lock down the entire economy, well, let's go back a step. We were told to expect 3 million plus people to be dead, not during the course of a year or two, but by the month of June, and then it would just keep escalating beyond that if we couldn't get it under control. So we're talking, the estimate of deaths was based on a time frame going into June. Maybe by the beginning, mid, or end, maybe by the end of May. We were dealing with a time frame of between April, May, and June. We're going to have 3 million people die of this horrible virus. You had Andrew Cuomo, I call him St. Andrew the Pious of New York, who never does anything wrong or evil because he tells you it's everybody else's fault, not his. Wanting 40-some-odd thousand ventilators he was going to need in a matter of days because of all the surge that was going to hit his hospitals. I mean, you remember all this? You remember the big hospital ship coming to New York Harbor to deal with it. Like him or not, Franklin Graham comes to town. Samaritan's Purse sets up these hospital tents in Central Park ready to deal with the massive number of people that are going to crush the hospital system. So let's go back to that time reference. We're told that millions of people are going to die, and we're told we need to do something for the next 15 days. Remember, 15 days to flatten the curve. Remember? Well, we're going to extend it a week, another 10 days, another month. And on it went. Some states, it became like living in a concentration camp. What you're allowed to buy, do, see, act, stay home, wear a mask at home. We did all this. Now, let's look where we are now. We allegedly have 400 heading toward 500,000 deaths. And I said early on back in November, when Joe Biden said when he said there would be 500,000 dead by the end of February, I said you can count on that. They'll make the numbers happen, even if coronavirus is far from the primary cause. Even if you've been healed of coronavirus, got over it, and died of something else, it'll still be a COVID death. I'm not being snarky about this. I'm just telling you, we've seen it happen over and over again. Car wrecks. People with advanced heart disease somehow magically became COVID deaths. So the 500,000 number will stand. We'll get up there around the end of this month, and then things are going to start to get better. Now, let me tell you why. I told you back that the cases would start coming down after Joe Biden took office. Why? Because he said he could fix the pandemic. Though they admit they have no plan. But everybody assumes that old Grandpa Joe has got the perfect plan to fix the pandemic. And so what's going to happen with the media helping him Oh, trust me on this one. The numbers are going to start going down. The headline came out yesterday. Numbers are going down. We're back to October levels when they were just beginning to rise again. How did that happen? Did all this double and triple masking and wearing pantyhose on top and maybe duct tape, did all that stuff do any good? No, not a bit. Well, the vaccine is rolled out there. It's stopping the spread. Nope, not doing that at all. In fact, if you do any research on the vaccine, you're going to find out one little bit of information. It doesn't stop the spread. It doesn't stop you from getting it. They're hoping, wishing and hoping. Remember that song? Wishing and hoping? That it minimizes the symptoms. And maybe it will, but once again, it's the long-term effect of how it affects our immune system. How are we going to deal with the wild variant again? Will we have a even more negative Kiastorm response that kills us? I guess the next 3 to 6 months are going to tell us a story if we start seeing something that we didn't expect. But let me get back to where we are today. And this is just my analysis based on the experience of watching how things have played out since the beginning. Quietly on the 20th of January, as Joe Biden was standing up there getting ready to be sworn in, the WHO, the WHO, you know the WHO, changed the standard of how you count a case. They changed the standard on how you will count a case. Up until the 20th of January, a simple positive test was automatically assumed to be a case. And now, how do they get away with that? Well, we have all these asymptomatic people that are spreading it at the grocery store and at restaurants and at churches and schools. All asymptomatic spreaders of this nasty disease. There's a lot of real science out there and a lot of empirical studies that are indicating there may not be any such thing as asymptomatic spread, but we can't say that officially. We're changing the way that cases are counted. Now, a simple test is no longer the requirement. You have to have other, symptoms presenting to be considered a case. We're now claiming for the first time the PCR is just an assistant or an assisting tool. Wait a minute. Since March of last year, the PCR test was the only tool to count a case. Now suddenly it's not the sole determiner of cases. It's just one of several things that can determine the case. You see why I talked about wisdom and discernment yesterday? And I want to knock this conversation off. I didn't really want to go down this path, but I'm going to finish my thought here. They've changed the rules again. They moved the goalpost and didn't tell you. Nobody's telling you. So the average person that lives off the sound bites is going to hear, hey, things are getting better. Even in the wintertime, the case numbers are coming down. It's working. The vaccine is working. Wearing 3 masks and duct tape and all this stuff is working. Praise be to Biden. He had a plan. He had nothing. The emperor has no clothes in this case. Just a change of the rules. And I'm trying to get confirmation. I've got information that has come to me, and I'm relatively confident on this one, that how some of these tests have been done in the past, the more CTs or cycle thresholds they go through, the more garbage shows up as positive results. By just lowering the CT threshold a little bit, the number of positive results drops as well. So now, a test that might give you a better understanding of the possibility of somebody having a virus, along with symptoms. Of course, the case numbers are going to come down. And once we have hit the magic threshold, I'm going to make a prediction that somewhere along the way, the original standard of counting deaths from the flu and from the coronavirus that were in place up until March the 24th will quietly revert back to the way they were a year ago. And then the number of actual deaths will also start to decline. Mark my words for it. It's going to happen. Because they did it last year. They made a change that nobody understood, except man, it opened the door to have nobody dying of the flu and everybody dying of COVID. When you have symptoms that are normally heart attack and stroke, now can be counted as COVID. And COVID can be assumed, not even tested, not even confirmed, just assumed. Okay, I've beaten this topic up. I didn't plan to do it. I'm sorry that I got into it, but I just, thinking about some of the letters that you've sent, and a lot of you are feeling the same way that I am. The numbers don't lie, but you can lie with numbers if you know what you're doing. And we have an education system today that has stripped out the concept of critical thinking. I've got friends, I got several people, and I got one that's coming to mind right now. People that come out of my line of work in broadcast engineering will understand this. We deal in a world of somewhat absolutes. In other words, if there's no electricity, the thing ain't going to work. If it's broken, it's not on the air. And, and how do you trace? How do you repair? There's a way to do it. It doesn't work on wishful thinking. Doesn't work on feelings and emotions. It works on scientific, unalterable principle. Period. And so I tend to think in those terms often when it comes to things like this. There's more than a headline to a story. How many times have I seen a clickbait headline and the story just is nonsense? The headline is over the top and you find out it's all a bunch of nonsense to begin with. And you just realize I just wasted how many minutes of my time on this. I hope when I do this radio program, I hope we spend some time together. I hope you're taking something with you each day. Like I say, I do read all the correspondence you send me. And I want to thank you. You said some of you said some very kind things that have brought tears to my eyes about how much this program means. And some days I come to the microphone and I'm just, Lord, what do I say? I don't want to beat the same, I don't want to be a repetitive record. But in this first part of the program, we're going to take an early break here just because we can. I just wanted you to understand that the reason I do this, I don't want you to be deceived. You know, even when Jesus talked to his disciples and prepared them for the times ahead, he warned his disciples they too are going to see some very perilous and difficult times. And they did. Name me one of the disciples that retired and got to, sit back and enjoy life. None of them. You will be persecuted for my name's sake. And I think a lot of Christians in America have forgotten that concept, that being a Christian doesn't make us popular with the world. It certainly doesn't. There was a time in my lifetime that somebody who was in the ministry had a deep respect if they were the pastor of a church in a community, even by the non-believers or people not with that particular church. There was a respect. we've lost a lot of respect in a lot of parts of this country. Let me give you an example. The other day, my wife and I had to make a little drive down the hill, as we call it, to a nearby town that I spent many, many years in called Toccoa, Georgia. And my wife's car needed some repairs, and it was the best place that I knew to take the car, and they had to have it for quite a while. It finally got fixed. So we drove down. It takes about an hour to get down the hill and across the mountain and down through town. And we're on our way back. And it just so happens we come through town and there is a funeral procession. We have to wait till it gets in front of us, and we're all going to be heading, looks like, toward the next county. And there you got like a sheriff's deputy as a lead car, a local city police car in the back of it with their blue lights on. And we're driving out of town, heading toward from Stevens County to Habersham County. People would stop in the other lane of traffic in respect for someone that had passed away they didn't even know. I saw car after car after car stopping, pulling over to the side a little bit just in case there was an emergency vehicle. They still do that in parts of the world. There's still some towns you can go into and watch people say grace in a restaurant with their family. Those places still, thank God, exist. But you want to know something? They're becoming fewer and farther between.
This is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
Draw on me. That's right. Shalom Aleichem. This is the nice Jewish boy, Jonathan Kahn, your Jewish connection, bringing you the riches of your Jewish roots in Jesus. Now get your pen out as fast as you can so you don't miss out on receiving a special free gift you're going to get and love in a moment. Now, in 1869, James Gordon Bennett, publisher of the New York Herald, decided to send his special British correspondent, Henry Stanley, on an expedition to find Dr. David Livingstone, who had vanished in Africa in search of the Nile. Bennett reportedly told Stanley, "Draw on me for £1,000 today to provide for your equipment. And when that's exhausted, draw on me for another 1,000. And when that's done, draw another, but find Livingstone." Now, only rich men can talk like that. Bennett was rich, but God is richer, and God is more generous. So God calls you to a great journey, a journey of love and a life of righteousness and holiness and ministry and good works. And He calls you with a holy calling. On your own strength, you'll never make it. But God has no intention of you not making it. He calls you to victory. He calls you to finish the course. He knows that in and of yourself, you're weak and you get discouraged. But He doesn't call you to complete the journey on your own strength or resources. He says to you, draw on me. Whenever you need, draw on me. My count is good. There's no end to it. You'll never exhaust it. You'll never exhaust my love or my mercy or my cleansing. You'll never use up my strength or my righteousness or my grace. Draw on me today. And when tomorrow comes, draw on me again. And after that, draw on me again. And I'll never withhold, but you'll receive everything you need to complete your journey with victory. But don't forget, draw on me. Now, how'd you like to be faster than a speeding bullet and more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, or how about just move mountains? You can. Sapphire is the super spiritual supplement to turn your walk into a super life with God, plus the incredible Mystery of the Temple doors, all free. How do you get all this? Easy. Just remember Jesus' Hebrew name, Yeshua, and you dial it. That's all you do. Just dial 1-800-YESHUA-1. But call now. You'll be blessed. But call 1-800-YESHUA-1. Now, I invite you to join me in the Great Commission to bring salvation back to the Jewish people and to reach millions of unreached peoples around the world on 5 continents. Just call now. 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's YESHUA-1. Or write me direct, The Nice Jewish Boy, at Box 1111, Lodi, New Jersey, 07644. It's The Nice Jewish Boy, Box 1111, Lodi, Lodi, New Jersey, 07644. Well, till next time, this is Jonathan Kahn saying Shalom Aleichem, peace be to you, my friend in Messiah, Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace.
is Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman.
And I want to welcome you back to the second half of Truth to Ponder for this Wednesday the 17th. Can you believe that we're more than halfway through? We've got 11 days left. That's all we've got. It's 11 days left in the month of February. And the first 2 months of 2021 are going to be behind us. And that means 6 months of doing the program, Truth to Ponder, will be behind us as well. And I have to wonder what the next, 3 months, 6 months, if God allows me to continue to do this program, I got to wonder where the topics are going to move to. We've talked a lot in this program about certain topics, and I'm not going to go to those now. I want to go into some different areas that I think are very important. Probably more important than everything I talked about in the first half of the program today. If you just tuned in, you're probably going to get the best part of the program. When I started doing Truth to Ponder, I didn't know what the direction was going to be. That's one of the reasons that when it was first kind of laid in my heart, I'm going to tell you when I first thought about doing a daily program. It was just before Easter of last year. This is like before the 12th of April. That week, I was only working 4 days that week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then I was going to be stuck in my hotel for basically Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. A couple of people I knew were able to kind of sneak away to places like an hour or so away. My wife was down in Florida, too far away for me to drive, and flying was not an option then. A lot of planes were not going anywhere. And so I had this 3-day weekend all by myself. Nobody around me at all. And I had some equipment in my office. I should say, actually, my hotel room / office. I did a lot of my work from home. Had bought my own computers and everything with me. Even a couple of video cameras. And I recorded a little short video for people that knew me and my work, and for at that time, your weekend show. And during that weekend, I was thinking about all that I'm doing and all I'm trying to kind of put into a weekend radio show to try to give you some information, the best that I had, and how not to be afraid and how to have fear. And that's when the idea of you need to talk to people every day. A weekend show is great, but it only has a fraction of the audience that a regular program, a regular weekday show has. But there are two problems with doing a daily radio program. Number one, it's daily. I mean, I'm trying to be semi-retired. I have other ministry things I'd like to be doing too. But God was just very loud and clear that this is one of the things that needs to be done, at least for now. And at least for now, it could be 10 years for all I know. But for the moment, this radio program is something that I need to be doing. I may never have 1 million listeners or 100,000 or 50,000. I may just have a small handful scattered from coast to coast, and a few here and there as a podcast. But if that's what God has given me for my, quote, congregation, then that's what it is. Sure, the human ego would love to say, well, I've got 500,000 listeners, or, I've got 50,000 listeners across. I don't know what I have. I really don't. Maybe just 500 of you out there scattered from coast to coast. But you're the 500 that God has put in the pathway to me to do this program for a purpose. There's a reason I share this information with you, and there's a reason you listen and receive it. One of the things that I've always been very strong about in all of my life. Now, I've got to qualify this. I spent years as a top 40 disc jockey in my younger youth years. as I got older and God really called me back to his fold, made a lot of changes. Did it make me perfect? Far from it. What does St. Paul said? I do the things I don't want to do, and I don't do the things that I want to do. It's that war with the flesh we all have. And that's why sometimes I just want to say, I don't need to be doing this radio program. Too much work. I mean, I'm the guy that's got to sit here in front of the microphone. I've got to think about what to do. Today is just one of those days I'm sitting down in front of the microphone and just sharing from my heart. Did that in the first half hour. Didn't really plan on getting into some well-discussed topics, but I just wanted you to understand it's one of the things that we need to talk about so you're prepared for how they use anything. Hate speech, white privilege, all those things you're not supposed to talk about. How they're being used to divide us even further. The pandemic has been very effective in really keeping Christians apart from each other. An online church is not really a church. Not forsaking the assembling of thyselves, as is the manner of some, but even so the more when you see the day approaching. And a lot of that happened because first, some churches, most churches are respectful, and early on we didn't know what we're getting into here. So, it's one thing to ask a church, can you take a pause with us? Can you work with us here? Can you pray? We're all in this together. I mean, I get it. But as time went on and the science was not proving a lot of what they're saying, but they keep doing the same thing. The old saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. We learned that lockdowns and shutting this down and that down doesn't do anything, but we just keep doing it anyway. And I think for some it was a power lust to do it. But getting back to the real thought at hand here. The church, as I said yesterday, Christians were woefully unprepared for such a time as this. I can remember a year ago, before my first phone call, so probably like a year and a few weeks ago, before I ever heard of responding to this coronavirus and all that we were doing. I mean, the stores weren't shut down, restaurants, everything was normal. My wife and I, a matter of fact, were supposed to have been heading out 2 years ago tomorrow to go to a conference in St. Augustine, Florida. So that to give you an idea, a year ago. And those plans got changed because of weather, just like we're having now. The global warming impact that gives you all that snow and ice and freezes up, windmills and throws snow on top of solar panels, that global warming. Yeah, how are we going to sustain ourselves with all this wonderful green energy? It's like I made the statement, I'm really beginning to think, I said it yesterday, that too many college degrees today's are certificates of stupidity, not of anything you've accomplished educationally. We can have sustainable, renewable energy in solar and wind, and then we get a snowfall. Because, see, their entire premise is we have never-ending global warming, and we need to dim the sun. You've heard that one. Dim the sun. That's something that Bill Gates is thinking about doing, sending particles into outer space to make it darker by day, to dim the sun, to cool down the earth, because it's getting too hot too fast. Tell that to somebody in Texas or Arkansas right now. Tell that to someone that lives in Chicago, Western New York, Ohio, Indiana, that we need to make the world cooler and darker. One of the things about Northeast Ohio and Western New York and Western Pennsylvania and Northern Pennsylvania have in common, there are more cloudy days than sunny days. We don't need it any darker. People can get depressed enough as it is in the winter. without making it colder and darker and more depressing. But the elites of this world think they got it all figured out because, see, they still have their place on the equator they can run off to whenever they want in their private jets. They don't have to worry about face masks and all the nonsense that goes with it. They can still get around. Just you and I can't. There lies the difference. Wisdom, as I started the program today, is increasingly short supply. Facts, figures, and Google only tell you so much. Wisdom discerns how to use that information and use it correctly, wisely, and effectively for the good, not for evil. In my work, this is what I wanted to get into next. I can remember in my life, being a disc jockey was great. Then I moved to the engineering side, and you didn't hear me on the radio much anymore. And as the saying goes in our business, I hung up my headphones. And I was a behind-the-scenes guy for years and years and years. Then I went to work for a Christian college in Northeast Georgia, Toccoa Falls College. And I did some on-the-air work, but not extensively. I still did more engineering and background work, building stations, acquiring stations, programming, managing. That's what I did for many years until the door opened to go into the ministry, which I did. And then from the ministry, after my first wife passed away, I went back to radio for a while before getting back to ministry again. And it's only in the last 16 years that I've really done any amount of on-air work again. I was off the radio for ages. Doing this program is not what I was doing for the last 50 years. Doing a daily radio show like this is rather new for me. I did a talk show for 2 hours live every day on a Talk FM, and I got news for you. That's a lot easier than doing this. There you have the telephone and call screeners and news people and all kind of stuff to work with when you just walked in the door. Before I fully retired, I had moved. I'm not going to say, I'm going to be very cautious here. I don't want to get anybody upset. But in my last couple of years before I retired, I worked for we'll call it, for lack of a better term, a ministry that did a lot of end-time stuff. And I did the editing for their daily program. And I also did some other stuff for them in terms of what they were going to do or claim they were going to do in having a radio station in the Caribbean and some others in the States, none of which ever panned out. And I was increasingly toward the end of my time. I was ready to leave. One of the things that I'm kind of like Jesus coming into the temple with a whip when they had the money changers. One of the things that really gets under my skin are people that use the ministry to make a profit. They become self-proclaimed prophets of God to make a profit. That has never sat well with me my entire life. One of the letters that I got the other day, I think it was an email. I think it was the other day maybe it was yesterday or Monday, I made the reference to the Reverend Ike. Anybody around here remember the Reverend Ike on TV and radio?
Place your hand in a receptive position now and let's sanctify your mind and sanctify your consciousness. Get everything out of there that can't stand money.
Somewhere in my younger years, I got exposed to some of these fakes and frauds that are out there. And I've talked about that on the weekend show in the past. Not going to get into a whole lot of detail. But I've got an aversion to those that engage in what is called Simeism. Now, that's a fancy-sounding term, but if you go to the book of Acts, there was the magician named Simon that saw the power that the apostles had, and they goes up and says, hey, I've got some money here. Let me buy this power, because if I have this kind of power, man, my road show is going to make a lot more money. So many people, and Jesus warned about this, would be fakes and frauds in his name, preaching false gospels, wrong gospels, misinformation, and would deceive many. Maybe that's one of the big reasons I stay doing this radio program. Because, let me put it this way. I do not own a brand new expensive car. My car now is going on 7 years of age, and my wife's car is like 12 years of age. And we did not buy them new. I don't have a Gulfstream jet. I can remember, do you remember, what was it, like a year or two ago? I think I shared it on the weekend program. Jesse Duplantis, with a church just outside of New Orleans. He's explaining to everybody why he needs a brand new Gulfstream aircraft to get around the world in a moment's notice. And then one day, somebody sent me a clip of Jesse Duplantis, and he's sitting with Ken Copeland on, I think, Ken Copeland's TV show, as they're sharing their experiences and why they need to have their own private jet fleets.
Now, Oral used to fly airlines,
right?
But even back there then, man, it got to the place where it was agitating his spirit.
Sure.
People coming up to him. He had become famous, and they wanting him to pray for him and all that. You can't manage that today.
Right.
This dope-filled world.
Right.
And get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Right.
It must be nice to be that special to not have to engage and worry about the things of this world. Look, I'm not tooting my own horn here at all, because I know a lot of other people in ministry like myself. And I do a lot of church ministry, most of which I never get paid for. Of course, I don't ask to be. God has been good to me, and I give a lot of my time. My time is something that in my retirement I can give. I can give my time, I can give my labor, even some money toward things. During this time of the pandemic, back in October, I made a ministry trip where I had to fly, and I had to go to Washington, D.C. to pick up a commuter plane to go to another place. And for the agonizing trip, wearing my face covering, I never feared the virus. I just dreaded having to wear that face mask and all the nonsense that was going on with it. And it wasn't long ago, back in early January, that I made a trip out to Texas. I'm glad I'm not out there this week, but I went out to Texas for another ministry trip. And, I can remember waking up in the middle of the night before I was getting ready to fly. The enemy of your soul tries to tell you not to make that trip. Don't go there. They're not that big of a church yet anyway, and, the virus may get you. And I'm just going, get thee behind me, Satan. I have no time to worry about something that I can't control, something that may or may not happen. If that's the case, maybe I shouldn't even go to the airport, because a drunk driver may run me off the side of the road and kill me. There's a lot of risk in this life. And when you look at the number of people that died in 2020 compared to 2019, there's no 500,000 extra unaccounted for deaths. Trust me. Numbers are running about the same as the last several years, just a slight increase as we have more people and we have more baby boomers aging out or coming of age where certain diseases begin to take out the first of us normally. I can sit at home all day and hide from everything, but I choose not to. I don't get paid to do this radio program. I don't get paid for a lot of the things that I do. As I said, I prayed for years to God. When I get to that point that I don't have to, work. For a while I worked full-time in a church. That was years ago. But for the most part, I've had a secular job to subsidize my ministry work. That's what I did. I know a lot of people that do it. St. Paul did it. He would come off the road for a while and make tents, raise money, then go back out in the field. I have friends that have worked in missionary radio or just as missionaries doing various things around the world. And they come home and they work, they raise money, they do all they can, then they go back to the field already supported in the work that they're doing. They raise their own income. It's a lot of work. And I admire them. But it's the fakes and the frauds and the phonies that I have no time with. I have no tolerance anymore. Jesus had zero tolerance for the fakes and phonies. I tire of people that keep reinventing themselves, but do the same things. See, I really believe that there is redemption out there, that there are some people that have been fakes and frauds that God has gotten a hold of and has turned their life around, and they're the genuine deal. But there are not that many of them. I can remember people like Robert Tilton. Remember that guy? I just say that because he got caught multiple times. Others that had ear implants, things in their ears you couldn't see, and somebody backstage telling them, okay, that man ahead of you, this person, his wife died or this or that, and then he would walk up, the Lord just told me that your wife died a while back. Yeah, how did you know? And everybody's oohing and eyeing how great this preacher is or how he knew about your diseases. And how if you just make a vow unto him and sow $1,000 into his ministry, that somehow all your diseases will go away and your bank account will get filled again. I have met in my life. One thing I really enjoyed about working for Toccoa Falls College was the integrity we had at the time that I worked there in terms of how we spent the money that listeners gave to us. Believe me when I tell you, all of us could have left that radio ministry, gone to the secular world, and doubled and tripled or more our incomes. I was working for Toccoa Falls when I had an offer to be a chief engineer in New York City for 3.5, almost 4 times what I was currently being paid at Toccoa Falls. Now, granted, it's a lot cheaper to live in Georgia than New York, but still. After praying about it, I said no. I was giving up too much of myself for a job that would get in the way of any ministry opportunity for the rest of my working life. And so I had to say no. I don't get wealthy. Don't need to. Not what I like to. I wouldn't mind trying it out for a change. But God has met my need. Many of you have been faithful to meet the need that I have just for this radio show to keep it on shortwave. That's a big deal. Shortwave needs to expand. As the tech tyrants clamp down, I'm on a podcast now. You may be listening to this today as a podcast, but you know something? One day, Spotify might say, Bierman's got hate speech, cut it off. iTunes may decide I don't need to be there either through some of the ways that the podcast gets there. So I always look at my time as a podcast on the main primary platforms as borrowed time with no certainty about tomorrow. So I'm thankful for every moment that I get. And that's why I continue to look for other alternatives. This program, I promise to give you honesty and integrity, information you could use. I'm trying to prepare the church. I think last year should have been a wake-up call. If you think that somehow with the vaccine or all this other stuff, it'll all magically get back to the way it was in 2019, it's not. It's never going back to the way it was. That's neither good nor bad. It's just a truth. The church is going to have to rethink its easy plan and its comfortable way of doing business because it's about to change. You found out certain governors hate churches more than they hate everything else. That's why they were singled out houses of worship. Yeah, St. Andrew Cuomo the Pious in New York was one of the worst offenders, along with Gretchen Wilson, or Gretchen, whatever her name is, Whitmire. And the other guy up in Illinois, they were just tyrants about churches. Why? Because they have no fear of God and they don't want a conscience. I'm going to be here tomorrow again. We're going to talk about some of these issues we've talked about all week. Talk about community, too. How do we build community? How do we use what we have? And I'm going to be expanding on shortwave in the near future again. We'll talk about it. If you believe in what I'm doing, would you consider even a small check to help pay for the airtime? The bill is coming due in about a week and a half. And any help you can give is appreciated. The mailing address, make the check payable to Ancient Word Radio. Ancient Word Radio. It is a ministry. And the address, my address, is simply 21 Berkshire, B-E-R-K, B-E-R-K-S-H-I-R-E, Berkshire Lane. Add the number 263. That's our little P.O. box. 21 Berkshire Lane, number 263. And we're in Sky Valley, 2 words, Sky Valley, Georgia. And the zip code is 30537. 30537.
This has been Truth to Ponder with Bob Bierman. To find out more, visit our website, truth, 2, and the word ponder.com. That's truth, 2, ponder.com. Truth to Ponder, shining the light of truth in a darkening world.